February 16th, 2024. We will begin with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Bieberdorf.
Here.
Maher.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Stroman.
Here.
Pettigrew.
Here.
Sechrist. Lehman.
Here.
Ham. Evans.
Here.
Roseland. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we will have an invocation by our own Councilman Josh Bieberdorf, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're willing, please stand.
God, so thanks so much for the time tonight. Thanks so much for our city. We just live in such a great place, and just look around this room and bless our conversation tonight. Bless all the people that came tonight to put input in this city. Bless everybody that gives of their time, both volunteers and paid, to be part of the city, part of the progress. And we just ask for you to bless this meeting tonight and be part of the conversation. Understand that these words aren't ours, but they're yours, and just be part of the process with us. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, folks. Next, we will take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Roberts, second by Stroman to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is adopted. To begin with, we will have a special presentation regarding the water rates. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get underway. Hopefully your microphone is on.
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you. My name is Gabe Lauber with HDR Engineering. We were the firm that assisted with the rate study. Unfortunately tonight, Sean Korn, our technical expert, was unable to make it, and so I'm kind of pinch hitting for him tonight. But just tonight we wanted to address a few things in conversations with staff, and I know some questions that have come up recently. So just a brief few slides here to hopefully try to address some questions that you all have been receiving recently here. So. All right, so first off, just a little bit of kudos, and I know this has been mentioned before, but to have a water system, to have 20 plus years of award-winning water quality for the staff, that's a testament to the staff, to the operations crew that work on your system every day. And you all have a unique system from what we see across other systems in our area, both having a surface water component from Pactola Reservoir and your groundwater source, very resilient there to have two water sources, 7 different pressure zones, a lot of grade change across your system. And then looking back here recently, as early as 2022, I know 23, we didn't quite have that available yet, but to have under 8% water loss in your system or unaccounted for water is really good, lower than the standard or national average. And with that, to also operate a system, you got a lot of components that are 100 plus years old, obviously beyond their useful life, and just having to maintain and operate those on a day-to-day basis. So why was the rate study necessary? And really, it goes back to some of your practices. So your policy says that every 5 years you're going to look at your rates. And then when looking at those rates, we want to make sure that the utility operates as an independent, whether water or water rec utility that's funded from rate revenue and is not subsidized by other tax dollars. Your policies that you adopted, financial policies in the previous rate study back in 2017, the goal there is to provide sufficient revenue to operate and maintain your system, maintain rates that are proportional and cost-based, also making sure that that's prudent practices, and then we develop that based on some industry standards, whether it's WEF or AWWA. So some additional basis of that study or foundation, and really, as I mentioned, the policies you adopted in 2017, we also took a look at what the council approved as your budget, your 23-24 budget, and then looking in there, obviously inflation being a factor recently with the last couple of years what we experienced, how that impacts. And then as far as growth is concerned, try to take more of a modest approach with a 1% annual growth in customer basis. So we just wanted here to just kind of show a little bit going back all the way back into May of last year when Sean was here to present to you all. There's been about 14 interactions, whether it's at the council level or the committee levels, public work, legal, and finance. We were able to provide you, I know it's on the website, a summary of our report, our findings, and now that you all have approved the rates, now that we can go ahead, the next step for us is to finalize that actual report and provide that to you. So next steps as far as an SRF or the State Revolving Fund Loan Program, when we're looking at your capital funded projects through debt service. And really for this city, the SRF program in South Dakota is a benefit. That's typically got a more lower interest rate that's better than you can go on the open market typically. And really the first step in that process is the rate study that we have worked on and completed for you as far as setting up the basis for funding those capital projects. So in the rate adoption, that's complete. As I mentioned, work on finalizing the study. And then as you go forward and decide to move on with those capital projects, those larger debt service projects, there's going to be additional interaction with staff and council as far as from a facility plan standpoint, where you're going to be looking at those projects, taking a closer look, is this the best option to move forward to meet the goals of the project? What is the most cost-effective way to achieve those goals? And then as part of that facility funding project, you also got to look at the rates, and you can use the rate study that we have worked with you on already as part of that facility plan project. And then also, again, as I mentioned, be coming back to council to discuss those and present those studies. So one other thing we wanted to just mention here in talking with staff is that, as far as public facilities go and irrigating, it's really on a individual case-by-case basis where the facility is located. What is the availability to domestic water? What is the availability to raw water, whether that's a creek, whether that's drilling a new well, and then looking at that impact from a capital standpoint up front, but also long-term O&M. And really a couple examples, it's our understanding Meadowbrook and Executive, those do use raw water because Rapid Creek is right there. And what we've actually seen kind of typically across the area is that it's more common than not to utilize treated water versus irrigated water in some of these facilities, again, due to cost-effective nature over the long term. So this slide here, just want to touch base on the adopted rates that you have in place here recently and the discussion of a debt surcharge comparison. And when we look at that, the debt surcharge, that is a fixed rate for all the customers. And so just an example here, the graph in the red and the blue, your average residential customer is somewhere around that 6 to 7 CCF. And so as a comparison, you can see there in the early years, the blue being the rates you recently adopted and the red being if you would take a surcharge approach. You can see that they're really close in the first couple of years, but really you haven't incurred on the water side those capital projects that you're looking at coming down the road. And as you can see, as you get further down the road, it's actually more costly to your lower end users to go towards a surcharge. And really that some of the basis of that is the debt service recovery that you're required by SRF or your other funding agencies, though, the 110%. And as you look at that, really, the accounts are proportionally charged. So basically, additional consumption does not incur additional surcharges. And here's a look at that debt surcharge calculation when we look at a per your meter size comparison. And this is just projected out over the next 10 years based on the capital projects that were presented. And really you can see that that debt surcharge continues to increase over the next couple of years. That surcharge, obviously, as you would take on those projects individually, whether that's SRF funded, you can update that debt surcharge calculation. Those surcharges would be in effect typically, if you're taking the loan out over 20 years, would be from the date of issuance. And when we looked at this comparison, we utilized the same projects that were identified in the rates you already adopted. So in summary here, we tried to keep this brief, but as we mentioned, the city's financial policies was a foundation for the study, the budget you adopted, the capital projects that were identified, and really with that, the overall goal was to provide a water system that's reliable, has available water to your customers, and provides the water quality that you've done in the past. We've addressed, multiple times here, where we've interacted with council or committees in regards to the study. The staff identified the capital needs, and then we set up the rate model to fund those capital projects. The study does prioritize the highest needs, and there is some deferred capital projects involved, and really trying just to minimize the rate impact. I think there was roughly, Sean mentioned, 15 million over the 5 years of deferred projects that's not in there, along with the financial policies actually utilizing reserves down to your minimum that you've identified in your financial policies, again with the overall goal of trying to minimize the rate impact. The study would be updated every 5 years, as is your policy. We took a look at the debt surcharge as an approach to funding capital, but as you could see in the one graph, the average residential count, actually it's higher cost to them. And then, as I mentioned, moving forward, as you take on individual capital projects, there'll be continued interaction, facility plans, state water plan applications, funding applications to discuss those projects further. With that, that's all I have.
Council have any comments or questions? John Roberts.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you a quick question? Is this all part of the finalized study that you put together? I was curious about these debt surcharges. We never saw them before. So I was just curious, is that in the final plan, or is that something that you just recently put together?
It's just recently put that together based on some feedback we received.
Would have been nice information to have 2 months ago. I find it interesting that we get this information now, after the fact. But anyway, that was my only question. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, I think he was saying there's no surcharge. So it was a hypothetical if we did a surcharge, is what I heard him saying.
You can put hypotheticals together.
There's no surcharge.
Debt surcharge.
Okay.
Debt surcharge.
All right. Did you want to talk at all to the surcharge?
That's fine.
Okay. Councilor Sechrist.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here, Gabe. I appreciate the information. I understand the fixed rate versus the surcharge. Our fixed rate allows more equal distribution of the additional costs for those that use additional water. And I guess in my mind, I can make sense of that. I did have a question, and I'm not sure who I should direct this to, if it would be to Director Ainsley or Director Tech. I was wondering if you could clarify for me how much of an interdepartmental charge is assessed to our enterprise fund for city services related to ongoing support for our water and wastewater accounts.
Okay, well, with that, we'll go to Finance Director Daniel Ainsley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In regards to the Attorney's Office in both 2023 as well as 2024, the Water Enterprise Fund will be paying $27,567 to the Attorney's Office, which equates to roughly 3% of the Attorney's Office budget. And so just when we looked at other comparable not necessarily comparable, but other water systems, that's actually almost the exact same as other water systems. And so it's not a significant amount, as I've at least received a lot of questions from the public about that. And so again, it's 3%.
Do our enterprise accounts have additional interdepartmental charges, or is it just the attorney's office? Is that tied into finance and other administrative services, or?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, there are several different services that do charge interdepartmental fees to every enterprise fund, and I think that's important to note that it's not just water, it's wastewater, it's the monument, it's airport, it's all of those enterprise funds that end up paying for it. And so when you look at it, it would include the attorneys as well as the finance department, IT, human resources, all of those various kind of service-oriented departments. A portion of their financing does come from each one of those individual enterprise funds.
Okay, so they're assessed back to the city for the services that they're receiving and in lieu of going out and using a private
Correct.
business service. Okay, well, thank you for that. I have one additional question, if I could direct to Director Ainsley. We talked a little bit back in November about the enterprise recovery reserves, and I don't know that I made that connection in my mind, I guess, how the rates were connected back to building those reserves, and we're depleting those reserves and have taken that into consideration and factored that into the increased step schedule. Anyway, could you clarify that for me?
Sure.
Thank you.
So during the last rate study that was, I think, 2019, one of the primary drivers of that increase was to build up the reserves, because at the time the reserves of the water fund as well as the wastewater fund were incredibly low. It was less than $1 million. And so part of the rationale for the increases that were made at that time was to increase the reserves in those individual enterprise funds. Those reserves have been established, and so no longer are you trying to build that up. And so now that money essentially that continues to be raised is available for capital projects. And so each year, as the overall budget grows for the water fund, for the wastewater fund, for everything else, the reserve requirement grows proportionally. But that revenue that was raised, that hasn't gone away, but that's available for capital projects.
Okay, thank you. I guess that just made me think of one additional question here. Do you anticipate that we're going to be able to progress through our capital improvements, road improvements specifically, a little quicker, just having the sewer and water capital improvements portion funds available so that we can then make more? I mean, just for example, one of the projects on this list of 24 projects that was included in the analysis for the need to raise the rates, thinking ahead for the future, not only with the larger capital improvements, but this was specifically a street that is near my house on East Talent Street. And I know that particular road has been on the CIP 5-year plan for 10 years or so. I mean, a long time. And so we're now moving forward with the engineering study. I think that the item is on the agenda today, so I'm super excited to see that happen. But a project that went from like 3 to 4 million is now, 2 to 3 million is now 4.2 million. And so will that allow us to make a little progress on some of those complete street reconstructions that are needed?
Probably
Good.
best appropriate for
Okay.
Public Works Director.
Thank you.
Dale Tech, you have the floor. Or you did.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a great question. All of our capital improvement plans, we're fiscally constrained. We have more need in the community than we have more money available to work on projects. Certainly with the construction inflation that we've seen the last few years, that has actually reduced our buying power when it comes to capital improvements. So certainly more funding for capital improvements per these rates will help us get more projects done. How long that will last, I don't know, but certainly with Talent Street being on the agenda tonight for consultant selection, that's a good sign that we have it on the plan and it is currently funded.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I yield.
Mr. Pettigrew.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next.
Dave, a question for you. I would assume your firm does rate studies, water rate studies all across the region. Can you give us some sort of analysis on how our rate increase is compared to other communities in our region? Are we out of line? Are other communities experiencing similar rate increases? Thank you.
Yeah, so I can speak to a couple examples there. So currently, just in South Dakota alone, communities in varying size, so Mitchell, South Dakota, they're looking at rate increases that are basically going to double the rates. And really, I don't know sometimes that it's fair to compare communities to communities because it's really a cost of service or level of service that you are providing to your customers and where your infrastructure needs are at. But smaller size community, Lennox right now is looking at a very similar size rate increase to you all. So I guess I can say is it varies across the board, but I know within our own state there is other communities that are looking at substantially higher rate increases than Rapid City is.
Is that all? All right, Councilor Stroman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question for Gabe. I noticed in the slides, you say in there that Meadowbrook Golf Course and the Executive Golf Course they use untreated water for irrigation. And then on another slide, it says that treated water used for irrigation is a common practice. But does that make it a best practice, or should we be looking for other alternatives for use of for irrigation rather than treated water?
Yeah, I think that it's a case-by-case basis that it sounds like staff has looked at in the past. So I think really it's each individual facility and taking a look at a comparison of costs, whether that is treated or raw. How close is the raw water source? Can you do a well that's going to work? Do you have a creek nearby, a surface water source? So I think the practice, as my understanding, the practice you have done in the past is a good practice to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
And next, we'll go to general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. We do have a number of speaker request forms. When you come up here, you have 3 minutes, and the monitors here will let you know how you're doing. And we'll begin with Patty Martinson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and City Council. You should have a copy of our presentation. I'll be just giving a statement that will refer to that presentation. The MEI, which stands for Municipal Equality Index, examines how inclusive municipal laws, policies, and services are of the LGBTQ+ people who live and work here. Cities are rated based on non-discrimination laws, the municipality as an employer, municipal services, law enforcement, and leadership on LGBTQ+ equality. The MEI is designed to understand the unique situations of each city and is structured to reward the specific achievements of a local government. Rapid City was among 9 cities in South Dakota to be given an MEI score. Scores range from 0 for pure South Dakota and 95 for bookings. 0 is essentially the worst, 100 is essentially the best. Rapid City received a score of 21. The MEI specifically rates cities on their laws and policies while respecting the legal and political context the city operates within. It is not a measure of an LGBTQ person's lived experience in the Rapid City or a rating of the best places for LGBTQ people to live. Some cities have the autonomy and wherewithal to pass inclusive laws and offering cutting-edge city services. Other cities are hampered by severe state-imposed limitations on their ability to pass inclusive laws, or they have found that the small scope of their local government limits their capabilities. Some positive things that Rapid City does are not in the MEI. Support for the Black Hills Pride Festival through city proclamation and a working relationship with the police department to ensure the safety of the festival. The good? The city reported hate crime statistics to the FBI and has a Human Rights Commission with non-discrimination enforcement. Opportunities? Non-discrimination laws for orientation and gender identity in employment, housing, and public accommodations. The municipality as an employer, LGBTQ+ inclusive healthcare benefits, and non-discrimination policies. 2 additional things that could be very doable for Rapid City: having an LGBTQ liaison with the city executive offices, as well as in the police department. Leadership, public imposition on LGBT equality, supporting pro-equality legislative, pro-equality policy efforts, and having openly elected LGBTQ city officials. Rapid City does not have to be perfect. No city scored 100, but Rapid City has models within our own state, and even a little improvement can mean a lot to the community that lives, works, and raises families here. We at Equality South Dakota and Black Hills Center for Equality can help and look forward to making Rapid City the model at the Star of the West, bigger and brighter. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Annie Bashan.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here tonight to talk about this women's prison that is going into Rapid City. And there was a comment that was made that Rapid City was good with this. And maybe I just missed it and I didn't read the news that year or something, but I didn't see anything about it. I didn't know anything about it until there was a groundbreaking. And so I just wanted to speak on that for just a couple moments here. Research shows that mass incarceration has little or no effect on violent crime. There's multitudes of 40 years worth of research to demonstrate that. And the data does link that lower crime rates, such as factors as increased wages, increased employment, increased graduation rates, and increased consumer confidence, right? That's what lower crimes. Right? This comes out of Forbes, by the way, not a bastion of liberalism by any means. So there's roughly 2 million people who are incarcerated in the United States, which is more than any other country in the world. High recidivism rates, such as the fact that there are nearly 2 out of 3 formerly incarcerated people are rearrested, show that incarceration just might not be the most effective tool that we use. The other thing that happens with incarceration is it tears families apart. And we see that repeatedly here in South Dakota. I worked for the first for-profit prison industry youth center in Los Angeles County in the 80s. It was called Prycor. They were the before Construction Centers of America. And what we learned back then with the research and why it was shut down was that it doesn't work. The thing that works is taking into consideration ACEs. So all that trauma that people have gone through, I suspect many of you up on the city council have your own stories, whether it was divorces or homelessness, poverty, maybe you witnessed abuse in the house, maybe there was alcoholism or drugs that were used. All of that affects us and how we deal with things. That doesn't improve by putting somebody in prison. In fact, what we know is it compounds that trauma to only make it worse. And so we put women into prison, and then we expect them to get out, get a job in a climate that nobody will hire you if you have a felony, can't rent an apartment even if you could find one if you have a felony. So you can't get a job, you can't get a house, and then which means that you can't get your kids back.
Time's up. Thank you. Next, Hermes Bellew. Did he? Okay. Will he return? Okay. Ben Sherman.
Thank you, City Council, for hearing me today. I am with Equality South Dakota. Again, speaking on some different details on the MEI index as released by the Human Rights Campaign. To give you an idea of the statistics of the LGBT people in South Dakota. So South Dakota has 895,000 citizens. And the latest data shows that about 6% of the population is part of the LGBTQ plus Two-Spirit community. So that means about 53,000 people are LGBTQ plus. That's over half of the population of Rapid City. On top of that, 20% of our population is Gen Z. That's ages 11 to 26. So they're our next generation that is coming up. They are more accepting and more concerned about equality in their communities. And if you factor that percentage into our population, that's 37,000 people. That's close to half the population of our city. Why this matters, not that this score will make people want to move here, but it may influence families, LGBT families, or Gen Z families that care about these things, about where they raise their kids. What type of policies are there, anti-bullying programs in the community, and down the line that actually affects our tax dollars in the future. Our community won't grow as much. And it'll miss out because it's not as diverse. This may seem like it really doesn't our problem, but we have to keep in mind that homophobia and transphobia, they may not be one person's responsibility, but as a society we have a duty. It's like we came and we bought a property and there's things wrong with it that need to be fixed. We ignore it, it's not going to go away, it'll get worse. All in all, I don't think Rapid City is a terrible place for the LGBT community, but there is room for us to improve, and the cost of doing that is pretty insignificant. So thank you for your time, and I'll leave it for the next person.
All right. Paula Zavitz? Okay.
My name is Paula Zavitz. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me tonight. I'm also speaking to you about the Equality Index. Ours is pretty low. I would encourage the leaders of our community to give that our attention for all the reasons that Patty and Ben have spoken of. One of my thoughts was that my family was in the Air Force. That's what brought us here. And I imagine there are some of you as well that were in the Air Force. It brings a lot of people already to Rapid City. And as I look around our town, I see a lot of work going on. I see apartment buildings going up and road work going on, streets being widened, housing developments. And I think that is, in a lot of it, I think is motivated in preparing for the people that will be coming when we get this new bomber. And we're all excited about that. We're excited about the money that we'll have when those people start paying taxes in South Dakota, and maybe we can afford to do some of the things that we hope and dream of. And we also look forward to having all of those people involved in our community and bringing their gifts here to us. Because I was in the Air Force, I know, and you probably do too, there are all kinds of people in the Air Force. There are people who are part of the LGBTQ community in the United States Air Force. And some of them are married, and they've got kids. So I think that it's worth spending time to make Rapid City a welcoming place for these people. And then not only might they stay, as people do, and continue to be part of our community, and but when they move on, as they inevitably do, they will have good things to say about our community in the new places that they go. So I hope you'll give this your attention and not put it on the back burner, but do what you can to make our community more inclusive and diverse. And I know that there are lots of organizations in our community that can help with that if you don't know where to begin. So, thank you.
Next, Brian Peck.
Oh, good evening. I'm still working on ending homelessness in Rapid City. It's a frustration. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr.'s day, and I've read a quote, and I thought I'd share that with you tonight. It says, this was at a speech that he gave in 1964 when he received the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, Norway. He said, "I have the audacity to believe peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits." Anyway, I was just moved by that and excited about how our community is reaching out to the homeless population in Rapid City in a lot of different directions, in a lot of different ways. And I just hope that you can support what I'm trying to do, whatever that might end up being down the road. That's one of the things I just, I mean, there's numerous different things that we can do, and a lot of different organizations that are working really hard to come together with the churches and nonprofits in Rapid City. I'm just really excited about that. I mean, there's some real negative things that are going on, but I just hope to be a problem solver within the ranks and to help people to come together to work together to do this. On another subject, on the sewer treatment facility that we're working on, we're looking at about a $150 million project. I've been working on trying to do affordable housing as well as affordable developing, and I've run across a couple of different things that might be another option to building a $150 million project. There's approximately, and I'm not sure if my numbers are right, but there's somewhere around 26,000 houses or residences that are serviced by the sewage treatment in Rapid City. So say we take 40,000. At $150 million, that's about $3,750 per household or per user. There's a Hydroloop system that will take care of sewage treatment in the house before it leaves, which would eliminate
Mr. Peck,
having to have that.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sean W. Sean, I don't want to mispronounce your last name. Wagner? Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Before we start time, can I ask you one question, Finance Director? Is that
This
okay?
is not a Q&A time,
Okay,
Sean.
well,
I'm sorry.
All right, I'll put it in then. Hello, my name is Sean Wagner. Everybody knows how to tell time, but not everybody knows what time it is. Well, I know what time it is, and that's why I'm here tonight. I'd like not only address the constitutional law to Rapid City government, but also to my colas, to the Wyoto and Lutheran Church, and all other leaders who think like this man, who not only shine with conscientious leadership, but also shine with situational leadership. I feel a lot of churches should take notes on the following. I want everyone who is concerned with the topic have the city interpret the South Dakota Constitutional Law 34-48A-51, civil defense shelters on private/immunity for liability. Any person owning or controlling real estate or other premise who voluntarily and without compensation grants a license or privilege or otherwise permits the designation or use of the whole or any part or parts of such real estate or premise for the purpose of sheltering persons. Let me take a breath. I'm sorry, it's my PTSD. Or use the whole or any part of parts of such real estate or premise for the purpose of sheltering persons during an actual impeding mock or practice attack or other disaster or emergency as defined within this chapter shall together with the successors in interest, if any, not be civilly liable for negligent causing a death or injury to any person on or about such real estate or premises for loss of or damage to the property of such person. As a non-trained shelter manager for the American Red Cross during Hurricane Irma at Hyde Park Presbyterian Church in Tampa, Florida, when the disaster struck,
Our main mission was to make sure all men, women, and children were safe from all elements during the natural disaster/emergency. Prior to accepting clients within the shelter during the extraction, the police chief and I did a walkthrough and communicated any concerns that needed to be immediately addressed. Then moved on, because we knew it was an emergency. There was some things that we just couldn't do that would address time. We had to move with urgency and, lead by situational leadership. I feel the city could have built a better bridge with the community by using more conscientious leadership. Hearts of men is how major wars and major wins within social and society groups have been obtained. Do your procedures and protocols override the citizens that put y'all into office? When the people are seeing a great example of the Stanford prison experiment, watching how the government is acting on this subject, and not addressing a true solution to this problem, which y'all basically stepped on the Care Campus neck to non-existence. I got some literature here for y'all.
Mr. Wagner, your time's up. You can
All right, thank
head
you.
down the road. Thank you. Mark Millar.
Hi, thanks for having me here. Sorry I'm surrounded by all these good people. I'm just here to bitch at you again. I'm still complaining about your water bill process. You gave me 10 days to pay a water bill after 40 years of service. I paid that water bill in 10 minutes, but you failed to drop the administrative charge of $50 for shutting the water off that you didn't shut off. The city routinely probably pays their bills in 90 days. I've learned a few things about this water bill since I've been coming here. One, that you changed the process last summer, and that would have been a knee-jerk reaction, I guess, to the reported fact that all the trailer house people were tens of thousands of dollars in debt to the water department, and you were fighting with them and threatening to shut off their tenants in order to get them to pay their bills. And recently now you've added a sign on the back of the till downstairs where people would come in to pay their bill, which seems to indicate I might not be the only person that has a problem with the new billing process, because the sign says if your bill includes charges for a disconnect, you're going to be a different process. Seems to indicate that we've got a little bit of that going on. Now, I came here as one of the littles to try to fight for my rights. And the approach the city gave me, thanks to Councilman Menards down there, Mr. Pettigrew, I should shut up and go home. I could have saved enough gas money not coming down here to bitch about your predatory billing process to pay that bill. Well, I always have paid the bill. My water rates have been paid up. I just didn't pay the $50 administrative cost. And so 3 days before the end of the year, Mr. Landine called me to tell me that you would, in fact, be showing up at my property to settle that $50 administrative cost, that you would, at no limit, shut my water off and add another administrative fee. I don't think that's even legal in billing to add fees onto fees, but that's another thing you can think about. I think you need to review the process of what's going on with the water department and the timing. And I've asked to speak on another subject here, and at that time I'll kind of bring my timing thing back to you on your responsibilities.
So
Thank
you have 3 minutes for all your comments. So if you had
I'd like to go on to that next comment.
meaning you had 3 minutes for both topics.
Oh, I was unaware of that. This other topic is totally public safety. It's got nothing to do with my personal deal. Okay, can we start? I'd like to talk about the snow removal on North Maple
Mr.
that I
Millar,
contacted the city attorney about
Mr.
on
Millar.
December 29th, 19
Mr. Millar.
days ago. That snow removal still isn't on
Mr. Millar, Mr. Millar, I have to tell you, everybody is 3 minutes.
For the public to pass
Okay.
the interstate for 3/4
You can submit that information.
or a mile and a half.
All right, please, that's enough. Thank you.
19 days you haven't removed the snow off your sidewalk.
Okay,
I called
duly
the
noted.
city attorney. We started
Mr. Millar, please. We have to keep decorum in here, okay?
I didn't realize I could only have one subject for 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. That the rules are for that for everybody. But thank you. If you have,
You hide behind your process well.
we have
It
to.
doesn't serve the citizens of the city.
Okay.
I'm not going away.
And that's fine. That will close public comment, and now we will begin non-public hearing items 1 through 7, and open public comment for items 1 through 20. I do have one speaker request form for item 16, and that is from Andrew Ironshell.
Tell them the state's throwing snow off that bridge as big as this on the pedestrians.
Good evening.
Almost as big as a snowman's head.
Good evening, community. I'm also here to talk about the school to prison pipeline, Nome's Women's Prison, Jason's Women's Prison at Rushmore Crossing, and why it's relative to item 16 on the agenda. It's about SROs. And we know that school resource officers are a contributing factor to the school to prison pipeline. They will be a contributing factor to the school to prison, Nome's prison, Jason's prison at Rushmore Crossing. And I think you officers should pay attention to this conversation, right? Pay attention. We're speaking up here about your lawmen in these schools. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but last year one of the SROs, a big black weightlifter guy from Central, threw down an autistic student for not dressing appropriately at a school dance. He didn't understand the dress code. And when he got a little agitated, the SRO threw him down. And so I think that you need to pay attention about how these police officers are criminalizing our students. 100% of expulsions in Rapid City area schools last year were Native American. I don't think that Native Americans are the only ones having trouble in our school system. So that, to me, shows you that our people are being targeted. Big red targets on them because they're students of Native American. That school to prison pipeline is real, and we are opposing it. We do oppose it. Don't believe Nome's propaganda that everybody in Rapid City wants this prison. No, we don't. And we want these police officers out of our schools. You shouldn't be funding SROs with nonprofit monies. Nonprofits barely get by as it is. Yet you're strong-arming nonprofits in this community to help you support the cost of SROs in our schools. Violent SROs. We have you have contract with the Aberdeen Area Tribal Chairman's Health Board to pay for SROs. I'm sure that the Health Board didn't know that you would be abusing our Native American students with those SROs, or they wouldn't have been strong-armed into giving you that money. We are following your money trail, and we're keeping an eye on you, and we will report everything that we find to you, as well as to the community and to the Department of Justice, as it should be. You should be investigated for the way that these mall cops are treating these cops that can't make it out on the beat, now get sent to our schools to abuse our students. Why? I don't know why. I may think it's a political agenda from RCPD or maybe from Jason Solomon, but the truth will come out, and you're on notice. Thank you.
All right, that'll conclude the public comment period on consent items 1 through 20. Now we will move on to items 1 through 20 with the council wish to remove any items or vote on the remaining consent items. Councilor Evans.
I'd like to pull number 6, please.
Number 6. Okay, Councilor Sechrist.
Number 20, please.
Number 20. Okay, anyone else? With that, I will look for a motion to approve items 1 through 20 with the exception of 6 and 20. Got a motion by Maher.
Second.
Second by Sechrist. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item number 6. Approve abatement request for stormwater drainage utility fee for Pennington County owned property, for tax ID 52965 in the amount of $473.72 for the assessment year of 2024. Actually, excuse me, I just read the wrong thing. Scratch that from the record. Authorize staff to advertise for bids for the water reclamation facility South Plan Improvements Phase 2, project number 20-2629.2, CIP number 51129.2. Estimated construction costs of $147 million. With that, we'll go to Councilor Evans.
Hi, I just want to say that although I'm in favor of so many of our projects and I want them to be built, in this particular case, I haven't seen any kind of executive summary, any kind of project plans that I'm voting on, and maybe I just don't know the right place to look. But because of that, until I know what I'm voting on, I'm not going to be able to support this particular thing. That's a lot of money, and I've stated many times over the last 4 years here that I believe our process is flawed. We need to see these things out for people to peruse, for us to check, and to understand what we're actually voting on. I don't see anything wrong with that kind of transparency, so I will not be voting in favor of this tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Sechrist.
Thank you, Mayor. I just thought I'd chime in here and ask a question of Public Works staff, if I may.
Sure.
And I don't know if this would be to Director Tech or someone else, but so this $147 million Phase 2 project did outline the components of the water treatment reclamation facility improvements included in this. However, as Mr. Evans was just kind of alluding to, I think we're missing the engineer's report. So I'm curious, is that a standard? Is this a typical process, an engineer's report? How much data is made available to us to make an informed decision? And then second part of that question is, I know the $35 million SRF loan that's tied into this most recent utility rate update is an additional piece of that, but I want to, just are we including inflation increase of costs from what this project was approved at in 2021? And where does that other $35 million come into play in this?
Director Tech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a lot of questions there. I'll do my best to answer them in order. We've been in front of the City Council numerous times over the last 2 years regarding this project. In fact, our lobby is full of storyboards out there that describe the project in detail. As far as the actual construction plans or an engineering report for the project, those are huge volumes of technical data. In the past, we have not made those available for the City Council to review. That's typically not in your area of purview. We certainly can have those provided to you when they're done. Certainly they're not done yet. Once they're finished, we're going to put them on the street for bid. At that time, you are free to look at them. We'd be happy to sit down with you and go over them with you. But the funding packages that we've brought forward, one was a year and a half ago, I believe, for the original $150 million. Actually, it was a little more than that. $145 million, which we received $43.5 million worth of grant funding from the state, and then a 2% interest loan for the 101. The reason we came back for the additional $35 million was for the very reason that you asked, is inflationary costs. We have to have a true cost known before we apply for those loans, or before we actually sign the paperwork on those loans. So we're very concerned about the cost of making improvements, the inflationary impacts we've had in construction the last 5 years, and we believe that this is an accurate cost.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. One additional thought I was just Is there a repercussion of not approving this tonight with the timeline of the access of that ARPA fund, the $43.5 million that was awarded? I'm a little unclear on what that timeline is. I know that the state has some restrictions or time associated with a use it or lose it. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. But I think more importantly is the regulations that we have to meet for discharge of treated wastewater. And we are in a path where we need to upgrade that plant, which was built in the 1960s, to make sure that we meet current water quality standards, not only today but into the future. The changing regulations are going to be upon us soon. We need to continue with this project. We believe we're at a favorable bidding climate right now. We've had interest from out-of-state contractors looking at the project. We know of a number of larger projects, East River, that are going to be bid soon. This gets us into the queue first, and I think that'll help us in this bidding climate.
Great, thank you so much. I yield.
Any other questions? Okay. With that, looking for a motion. Got a motion by Sechrist and a second by, is it Pettigrew? Or Bieberdorf? Couldn't see. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Aye. I got 2 noes from Evans and Roberts. Motion passes. Next, we'll go to item 20. Continue the award of Rapid City Landfill Cell 15 liner and leach it. I probably got that wrong too. Collection. Project number 18-2448 and CIP number 51202.2 opened on January 9th, 2024 to the February 5th, 2024 City Council meeting. We'll go to Councilor Sechrist, who pulled this item. Ms. Sechrist, would you press your indicator? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so this project caught my attention. I, along with some of my fellow incoming council members, did a tour of the landfill, and so this wasn't far from my radar as a future needs. Obviously, this has been planned for some time. I did notice in the agenda the breakdown of what the staff recommended proposal was in the CIP was much, much lower than what the engineer's report or the engineer's estimate came out to be. And then when we received the bid was even 1.2 million higher than what the engineer's estimate was. And I was just curious, I couldn't decipher from the information that was there what the increase in that cost was, 2.5 or 3 million, and I'm going off of memory here, additional cost for that. And is that just a matter of the timing from when it was put on the CIP and planned to when it was bid and then awarded, or to be awarded? If Mr. Tech could please clarify. Thank you.
Okay, Director Tech, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly, when we bid projects, the task of our consultants that we hire is just before we bid the project, they update the engineer's estimate of what we believe that the price of the project will be. Certainly, we don't control that. Obviously, we're governed by state law where we have to accept bids for projects. Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower. One thing I will add, though, is the reason we're asking to continue the award of this till next week is we are able to negotiate with the low bidder in this instance, and we hope to get a more favorable bid negotiated downward and bring that back to you on February 5th.
Thank you for that. That was my next question, but I guess my final thought on this is when you do have a project in the CIP that is such a significant increase from what it was originally budgeted, how is that additional amount reallocated? Is that from other CIP projects, or is it?
That's a great question. Typically, we have to look at our overall CIP and make adjustments on other purchases or other projects.
And how's that decision made? Is that just kind of a round the table discussion, or is it a prioritization? There's a master plan you're referring back to?
That is done by city staff typically. We typically speak with our finance department as well to see, first of all, we have to have the money to be able to pay for the project. If we bid it, we can't award it unless we have the funds available. Then yes, we look at the CIP projects that we have on the books, typically in that same year. And if we need to move one out a year, we may have to do that to find funding for it. Or if we have some dollars in either reserves or in contingency on another project, we may be able to utilize that funding to be able to award the project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Sechrist, second by Maher to approve. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to the end of the consent calendar. We now begin non-consent items 21 through 27 and open public comment for items 21 through 27, of which I do not have any speaker requests for, so we will close public comment for these items. Move on to ordinance number 21, second reading of ordinance number 6600 regarding supplemental appropriation number 1 for 2024. Motion by Roberts, second by Sechrist to approve. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 22, authorize mayor and finance director to sign the Solid Waste Division semi-annual report and annual operating report required by the Title V air quality permit. And this was, the recommendation was to send to council without recommendation. So public work. Oh.
We're authorized, move to authorize mayor to sign.
Okay, we have a motion by Sechrist and a second by who? Bieberdorf. Okay. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 23, approve resolution number 2023-086, a resolution levying assessments. Recommendation of approval 4-1. Is that a motion by Bieberdorf? Second by Sechrist. All in favor? Oh, stand by. Mr. Roberts snuck it in on me. Mr. Roberts, you have the floor.
He's trying to avoid me, I know.
No, I'm not. I can't avoid you.
I have a question for community development, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Vicki, a few years ago, we used to get these breakdowns, and then they would also give us the past, when they had violations. I wish we could do that again, because I know one of them on here has had quite a few violations to it. And I was just curious, can you tell me, or can Daniel tell me when actually 2111 Central Boulevard was cleaned up? When did they do that? I know.
Director Fisher, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. First, Councilman Roberts, I think you make a good point. You know, I sit here with a cheat sheet that says how many offenses we have, how many times we've had to abate these properties. So that particular property, as an example, this was our 4th offense that we had to abate.
Filling up again. That's why I just had a call about it again.
I don't have the date, but by the time it gets to you, we're probably looking at 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
We do put a lot of these repeat offenders on a regular routine inspection. We don't wait for a complaint. We get on it. But remember, we only have 3 code enforcement officers, and our city continues to grow. But I'll make note of this. So twofold. One, the comment sheet that's attached that describes the abatement, we can add another column that says, is this a first offense?
I would personally like to see that.
One of these on here, it's their 11th abatement.
Yeah, I know.
So
yeah,
that
I've been here for a long
it does
time.
go to show to habit.
So, but I do want to thank you. There's one on here that I actually called about maybe 9 years ago or 8 years ago, and I wasn't told by you, but I was told by somebody else that it couldn't be done, and I see it's done now. So I appreciate that. We'll talk about it later. So, but I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Councilor Evans.
I just wanted to make the comment as to why I voted against this particular thing at Legal Finance. I don't believe the city should ever be acting as any sort of bully. And it's really easy for people, as I said, sitting in offices being paid $100,000 to $200,000 a year to write these things out, to go after some people that I don't know if they're paying for cancer treatments for their dying child. I mean, I don't know that stuff. And so I think there's got to be a better way to make these things happen, aside from hiring some outside contractor to come in and then slapping people with a $7,000 bill that may or may not add to the trauma. So I vote against it, and I'm going to vote against it tonight, even though I know it needs to be taken care of. It's just on principle. I brought this up 2 years ago. I brought it up a year ago. I think there's got to be a better way for the city to make this happen, rather than to use its bully power in a way that may be affecting people. I mean, $7,000 may not be a lot of money to some people, and I don't know whether it is in the case of this particular one item or not. But I do know for many people, it's the difference between having a home or being homeless. It's the difference between being able to feed your family or not. So I'm just going to vote on principle against this, even though I know it's going to be cleaned up and I know they're going to be assessed and I know that it's a losing proposition. I don't plan on it losing here, but I'd like to see the process change somehow. So that's the reason I'm voting no here.
Okay, looking for a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Got a motion by Roberts, second by Maher to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes with 1 no from Evans. Next, we'll move on to item 24, a request by Davis Engineering, Inc. for Mark and Ramona Hirsch for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots A and B for Hirsch Addition, generally described as being located east of Miracle Road and south of Sheridan Lake Road. The recommendations to approve with stipulations.
Motion to approve with stipulations.
Got a motion by Roberts to approve with stipulations, second by Sechrist. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 25, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for BP Rushmore LLC for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed Lot 2 of IGT subdivision, generally described as being located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Table Rock Road and Mount Rushmore Road. The recommendations to approve with stipulations.
Move to approve. Second, with stipulations.
Motion to approve with stipulations by Maher, second by Roberts. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 26, a request by FMG Inc. for Western Dakota Technical College for preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots A, B, C, and D for WDTC subdivision, generally described as being located north of South Dakota Highway 44 between Mickelson Drive and Valley Drive. The recommendations to approve with stipulations.
Approve with stipulations.
Got a motion by Roberts, second by Roseland. All in favor? To approve with stipulations. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us down to item 27, an appeal by Jayton Roberts to reinstate his revoked security license. The recommendation is to deny.
Motion to deny. Second.
Got a motion by Roberts, second by Stroman to deny. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to public hearing items 28 through 30, and we will open public comment for those items 28 through 30. And we have no request forms, so we will close public hearing items 28 through 30 and move to consent hearing items 28 through 30. Would the council like to vote on the consent items, or? I know he didn't put in a request, but I think the guy on the appeal is here. Oh, stand by. Mr. Roberts, are you here? Did you want to speak to your item at all? Sorry. I didn't have a speaker request form for you. Okay. Thank you for that. We're on to items 28 through 30. Would the council like to approve all items in bulk or pull any items for separate consideration?
Second.
Motion by Roberts, second by Stroman to approve items 28 through 30. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to the end of the consent calendar. We will now look for a motion to enter executive session.
Second.
Motion by Lehman, second by Roberts. We are all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're in executive session. Third floor, folks.
Wasn't quite that late, but too late, yeah. Anyway, once in a while you find it.
And I'll be forwarding any of our timestamp.
Asleep, Heidi?
Can I get a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Evans, second by Roberts. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're out of executive session. Now we'll go to the bill list. With that, we'll go to Finance Director Daniel Ainsley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The total bills for tonight are $12,425,099.21.
Motion by Lehman, second by Evans to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Roberts, second by Stroman to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.